Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Villains. On the Rebirth server, we are with Nightmare Lass, our Mastermind, who's level 42, with 1.almost 7 million XP earned and 1 point just under 5 million to go to get to level 43. And our next set of enhancement slots, we have 59 million infamy, and we are going to begin working for Ambassador Rurekt. I don't know anything about this story arc. We're pretty much within a level of the max level my supervillain, I believe, gained in live play. And I only ever got one character above 40, and she was it. And that would have happened in late '05, early '06, probably early to mid '06. And so it's been 14 years since I've seen any of this content. I don't know if this is one of the older missions or not. I think we're going to just go ahead and do it. So, Rurekt says, commence education. Rikti factions. Rikti invasion stalled. Rikti on Earth stranded. Rikti on Earth divided. Two factions. Traditionalist, restructurist. Restructurist seek new social model. Restructurist mostly military. Restructurist core belief. Merit, success, power. Restructurist military majority. My faction. Restructurist. Traditionalists culturally bound. Traditionalists seek stable society on human Earth. Traditionalists enemies. Traditionalists outnumbered. Desperate. Desperation may negotiate. Heroes. My goal. Sabotage negotiation stance. First matter. Acquire traditionalist weapons. Fortunate event. Traditionalist weapons researched by Council. Nightmare Lass can steal weapons from the Council. So, the story here is that the Rikti restructurists want to fight on Earth, and the traditionalists are trying to make peace, I guess. I thought it was the other way around, but apparently not. And so, in any case, there's two factions, and we're going to get weapons from the Council, who they have stolen from the traditionalists. And that's the first step. The second step is going to probably be beating up some traditionalists. So we're going to be fighting some Rikti, but first we're going after the Council with our little minions. Oh, and by the way, I did manage, only bronze, but I did manage to get a bronze medal for the snow run in the winter area for the winter event. I did a couple more runs. I can't seem to get it below a minute. I'm not going to play with it. I'm not interested in sort of working it till I get the gold or whatever. It's fun to do a little bit, but that's enough. And now we're going to go back to our regular missions. I probably will go back there and play with it a little bit, mostly just because I like the feel of zooming around. I might do it with Tiger Strike, just to get the medal for her, and just because I haven't played her in a while. And I may even go back, actually, on Homecoming and do it with my, my Scrapper, although, of course, I can't film any of that, because it's banned to film and post recordings of what you're doing on it. It's not banned to film it, right? I can record it, they can't stop me, they can't even know I'm doing it, but if I post it, that's banned from Homecoming. So that's why we're playing on the Rebirth server. And I like Rebirth a lot, although I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they haven't done anything in terms of, say, a cost structure to account for the fact that they're a tiny, tiny little server with very few people on it. For example, Artywin, the person who, in my supergroup, who told me, I mentioned last episode, we were talking about like how the purpose of the ambush missions and the structure of how they were done was done on purpose to basically, nerf isn't the right word, but basically to screw with stalkers, because stalkers were having too easy of a time in it. In rescue missions, they could just hide their way to the NPC and just kill the guards of the NPC and then be done. And so they started making these escort missions so that the stalkers had to turn off their hide and run all the way through the mission, which meant, as you saw with Nightmare Lass, a lot of times you have to kill your way. You have to kill your way to the kidnappee, or kill your way back out. One way or another, you're going to be fighting your enemies, right? You're not going to be sneaking through. Anyway, Artywin was talking about having a base here, and how her base doesn't really have much in it, and there aren't that many players. It's not like you can have a lot of easy to find members for a supergroup. And so it's very difficult to earn a lot of prestige here, because you're pretty much doing it either as a solo or as a very small group. And she said, look, I don't mind that they're doing the fact that you have to pay rent and prestige, but she said they could reduce the cost, or just cut the costs by 3/4 or something. Instead of having it be 100 prestige a month, that would be 25. That's actually not so bad. But, of course, for a beginning base. But she said, look, I don't even have base teleporters. And like, what's the point of a base if you don't have base teleporters? I said, well, I use it for storage with salvage and everything. And she said, well, I guess it's sort of worth it for that. But, she was saying that because there were so few people here and it's really hard to get a supergroup, they should make some allowances for that. And I agree with her. And as I've said, I think they also ought to make allowances for the fact that there aren't enough people farming and putting up for sale on the auction house the recipes and the orange salvage and stuff like that, which is why orange salvage can go for millions. And so I was saying, look, I don't mind that the auction house is there, but it would be nice if they, somehow made the requirements for the recipes a little less, because there's a boss. Because we just, even if you have the money to buy them, there aren't necessarily any ingredients to buy or any recipes to buy. So, where's the mouse? Here we go. So, I think I really like the Rebirth server, but I think they should be practical about the fact that there aren't, just sort of admit the fact that they don't have a lot of players here, and stop trying to run the server the way it was run live in terms of the amounts of things that are needed to build bases, the amount of prestige you need to build recipes, the number of ingredients you need, maybe increase the frequency of the drops, or how about one thing they could do would be to dramatically increase your inventory, right? They didn't want to have a huge inventory for salvage and recipes because it's database, right? If you have 25,000 players on the server, and this guy's going to keep going invulnerable here, but sooner or later he'll stop, and there's really nothing we can do about it. You can't make him stop. So you just have to keep dealing with him. There's nothing else I can do. Is just keep ordering my guys to attack him, and hopefully he won't shield up again. I think they can only do it once. So they have 165 or whatever limit because they didn't want everybody running around with 500 items. But the reality is that here on this server with so few players, they could let us have 1,000 salvage. It wouldn't affect them in terms of the database because there just aren't that many of us. So let's see, do we have a white star here? It tells us, yeah, it tells us where we're going. So I think there are things that they could do to mitigate against the fact that there are so few players. The other thing they could potentially do, presumably, is go into the loot tables and just increase the frequency of either some frequency of recipe drops and also the frequency of orange salvage drops, so that when you're trying to make the invention recipes, you have enough loot, enough salvage to do the drops, to do the recipes from your drops. So the idea is, well, if there were more salvage drops, there'd be more people selling them on the auction house. There'd be more of them up for sale. And if there were more salvage drops and more recipe drops, you wouldn't need to buy them on the auction house as much. And so I think that could help mitigate the problem that there are too few of us and there's just, the auction house is completely anemic. You cannot have, realistically, a vibrant auction house with no players. It depends on there being lots of players. There's a reason why they linked the auction house across servers in the old days. And that's because they didn't have enough, and I didn't have my toggles on. I had turned them off for the ski run. They didn't have enough players even during live on a single server for there to be enough movement in the auction house. So to increase the circulation, they we're on a story arc. To increase the circulation, they linked the auction houses across servers. I don't think it was true originally, but I think later on, after a couple of years, they had to link it across servers because they didn't have enough players for a single server to have a vibrant enough market. Now, the number of players on a single server is about what there is on all of the Homecoming servers. Rebirth is nothing. Rebirth is a tenth of what they used to have on a single regular server, and even on a single server they decided there aren't enough and they linked servers for the auction house. So we're looking at like 1% of the circulation that was had in live, and yet everything is costing what it costs in live. That, I think, it's inconsistent, and I think they really should, the Rebirth guys should really look at going into the loot tables and going into those areas of the game and just tweak it so that you don't need as much to build yourself a set of enhancements. Otherwise, the grinding is just incredible, and that's why I think you don't get, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Somebody comes onto Rebirth, I mean, this one player, she's on both Homecoming and Rebirth. On Rebirth, what's she doing? Using reward merits to just buy the enhancement sets that are available on the reward vendor, which is only the basic ones, the simple ones, not the really cool high-end ones. On Homecoming, she's got herself all tricked out. So how many players are going to want the limitations of Rebirth when they can go on Homecoming and they don't have those limitations? Same thing with the incarnate abilities. You can't get these on this server without running incarnate trials. Whereas on the Homecoming server, you start getting the experience as soon as you're 50th level, and when you get enough veteran levels, you'll have all your hybrid slots, or all your incarnate slots unlocked up through hybrid. And so that's going to make people more likely to play because they can do it without needing to do these hardcore runs, which again, there are enough people to do on Homecoming, but there aren't enough people to do on Rebirth. I mean, it's like the whole server has to get together and schedule an incarnate run to get it done. And how often is that going to happen, right? Versus Homecoming, where back in the day, a year ago, my supergroup just by itself had enough people to do an incarnate run. So when you have to get the whole server isn't a lot more active than my supergroup was last year when at peak activity. That's pretty sad. And that's about, the whole server is about, when my supergroup was max size, was like 150 people. That's not much smaller than the whole server of Rebirth. That puts it in perspective. One supergroup on Homecoming is as big as almost the whole Rebirth server. And that's why the economy on Rebirth is utterly broken, because you can't have an economy with that few players. Anyway, mission success achieved. Weapons perfect. Next step, use of weapons. Mwah. Ha ha. That's awesome. Precursor activity completed. Time occurs. Commence sabotage. Operation Destruction. Longbow base. Nightmare last roll. Destroyer. Longbow base. Tools provided. Recapture traditionalist weapons. Blamed traditionalists. So we're going to go to blame the traditionalists. We've got these temporary powers we're not going to use because we're going to let our minions do all the damage. But we'll leave a bunch of weapons behind so that it implicates the traditionalists. Or the restructurists. No, the traditionalists were working for the restructurists. I'm confused. All right, let's teleport to the mission. And I need to turn visible again. By the way, I do want to say I greatly appreciate the guys, Wretched and the other guys who run the Rebirth server, for running it. I very much appreciate it. They do it without even asking for any money. I really appreciate it. I'm not trying to be critical of them. I just think that their sort of slavish isn't the right word, but their insistence on trying to keep everything exactly the way it was in live, including like the costs of things. I appreciate what they're trying to do because I'm a big fan of doing it the way it was done in live. Heck, I've said I wish I could get on a vanilla server that was like from issue 1 or 2 and not all of this post City of Villains garbage. But you still have to make some allowances. You can't try to run a server with 300 people on it the way they ran a server with 3,000 people on it. The economy is not going to be the same, and you have to realize that and make some changes. Heck, even on Homecoming, in terms of the economy, it destroys a security computer. Even on Homecoming, they put some sort of a weird cap in place or a minimum or something on some of the salvage because the salvage prices were getting ridiculous. And it was something like, well, if you can't find a salvage for a certain price, I guess the game just generates it for you. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but the whole idea was they said even for them, the economy wasn't vigorous enough to allow what was being allowed in live. And that's with 4 or 5 servers being run, all of which are several times the size of this server. So I think you just have to acknowledge that there are, as much as we love the game and as good as the game was in live, there are some things that they did in the game that were designed around the assumption that you have a live server with a lot of players on it, and we don't have a lot of players on this server. So, yeah, I wish they would be willing to make certain allowances for that. Seems like they really don't care to do that. I guess they're really... my sense is that they're really stuck on kind of being Puritans about trying to keep it the way it was in live. They have done some changes to certain powers, but for the most part, they've left them the way they are in live. You know, it's interesting. I don't know if they changed, what was it? Not build up, whatever it was called, rage or something in the, yeah, it's rage, I think, in the super strength tanker. That was changed on Homecoming because apparently the way it was working, where like the crash that's supposed to happen at the end of the rage wasn't happening, was a bug, and so they fixed the bug, and a bunch of people called it a nerf to rage, and they were like, no, we're not nerfing it. We're fixing something that was identified as a bug in live, and the developers never got around to fixing. And I don't even know if they fixed that here on Rebirth or not, because I don't play a super strength tanker, so I've never experienced playing rage on this server. If anybody knows, let me know if they've actually fixed it or not. I don't know. But even then again, you know, that's, since it was a certain way in live, I suspect that they're going to keep it that way here, regardless of whether it's a bug, right? Because they seem to have the philosophy that we're going to try to keep it as much like live as we can. And I do respect that. And I like that in general. I like that. And I do like Rebirth for that reason. But I still think you have to sort of calibrate and go, okay, well, if we only have 10% of the players that they had in live, then we need to calibrate the costs of things to match that percentage rather than trying to keep the rarity and the cost the same as they had them in live, like quantitatively the same, numerically exactly the same, even though we don't have the same number of players by even, you know, a tenth. And so I think at some point resort needs to be had to reality, which is that they don't have enough players to maintain this economy the way they're trying to. It's a shame they don't. I wish they did, but they don't. Go get him. It's going to aggro whoever's upstairs, but that's fine. We're doing well. So we're looking for a security computer here. Lost the mouse again. Here it is. What are we doing in terms of this base? Okay, so there may be more floors. And there is a boss, so I guess there aren't going to be any floors, more floors. Alright, so time to buff up. Yeah, a Rikti drone? Can we summon a Rikti drone? Let's get him. Hey, one more minion, I'll take it. Alright, I guess we're going to just attack. Tried to do teleport, didn't work. Alright, now I'm going to cut that guy's defenses down. And then we're going to attack him. Go get him, guys. Is the drone with us? Yeah, it is. Alright. It's very, very hard for anybody to run away from me with these minions because the slowing from the ice powers. Now he's gonna be... What's he doing? Moment of Glory? Yeah, we can't do anything to him now. And now he's gonna regenerate because he's gonna regenerate faster than even all my minions combined can do. Because look, they're doing 1, 1, 1, 2. And we just gotta wait it out. Sooner or later, the Moment of Glory or whatever it is, Unstoppable, will fade. But you can see that as long as he's got it on, we're not going to be able to overcome his regeneration. Sooner or later, it will fade and we'll start doing actual damage to him. There we go. And there is the computer. Oh, wrong thing. Attack the minigun first. Then attack the computer. I don't know what this thing is, this flashy thing. There we go. Alright. Can we call up our contact? We can. He says, status, excellent, tensions rising. Longbow believes traditionalist responsible. Next mission is now set. However, are we... No, it's only 22 minutes. Yeah, let's do another mission. And of course, every time I do this, I then get into a 45-minute mission and turns it into an hour episode. But let's try. I haven't recorded in a while other than episode 7, so let's go ahead. Final phase, so this should be the end of it. Nightmare Last mission, destabilize traditionalist human relations, attack Rikti traditionalists. And we're right here in Nerva Archipelago, which is useful. Alright, we have some decent inspirations. I guess we can go ahead. I don't know if we're going to have an elite boss. We'll see. So as we go, let's mention a couple things. I've played now 10 one-hour sessions and recorded them of Ironsworn. I am very glad, though, that I didn't start posting them. I've made a lot of mistakes in that game. It's very different from games like Dungeons and Dragons. It's very way outside my normal comfort zone for role-playing. Even though I'm used to role-playing consent-based on a mush, I'm not used to rolling for things in a consent-based setting. And I'm certainly not used to solo role-playing in a consent-based setting, because solo role-playing is like writing a novel. Right? This is different because it's a game. There are rules and mechanics. And it's very easy to get caught up in doing the mechanical moves and not really doing the fiction that goes along with those moves. I actually ended up doing an episode, or a session, I guess. I'm recording it and then like watching it to see what I do, because I often catch a lot of my mistakes. Just like here, if I rewatch an episode, I'll say, oh, what did I do that for? I should have used this inspiration here, or I should have summoned this, or buffed my characters, or I attacked this guy first, or whatever. I'll see the mistakes I made upon, like this, right now, right? What did I make as a mistake? I didn't attack the Guardian first. Right? And I'll notice those mistakes much more when I'm watching than when I'm playing and narrating. And similarly, when I'm playing Ironsworn, after I rewatch, the episode I just did, I'll see a bunch of mistakes that I made, and oh, I didn't apply this rule correctly, or I should have rolled for this. And so going back and watching, I think one of the very clear issues I'm having is getting trapped in a cycle of doing the mechanics without really doing the fiction. And I think I need to slow down the mechanics and put more time into the fiction that I'm narrating. So that's one of the things I've noticed. Another thing I've noticed, and it's really interesting because the author of the game actually said this in he made like a Twitter chain, a chain of tweets where he was talking about Ironsworn, and he was talking about things like soloing the game, and he said his sense from talking to players and watching their playthroughs and stuff is that solo players are actually harder on themselves than a DM or a GM would be on them. It's almost like he said I would like to try to study the psychology of this. He said I feel almost like there's a, what are you doing running around like that from over here? We didn't go over here, you stupid minion. He said I feel like there's almost like a psychology thesis in this, that why is it that players who are soloing can attack tend to be harder on themselves when applying the rules and making decisions like what should happen to their character after a failed move. They're harder on themselves than a game master would be. He said it's an interesting conundrum. I think one of the issues as a solo player is you're trying really, really hard not to cheat. And so when there's something ambiguous and you're not sure what the outcome should be, your tendency is to make sure you're not cheating by giving yourself the absolute worst outcome rather than maybe the more obvious outcome. And so, whereas a game master would often be much easier on the player than that, right? They wouldn't give you the automatic worst outcome. They try to go easy on you, or at least middle on you, right? Not super easy, but not super hard. And so I think part of my problem has been that in my effort to, I'm always afraid whenever I, kind of feel like I've gone easy on myself. I'm like, I don't want to cheat. That's a boss there. Oh man, with a guardian. I don't want to cheat. Now I'm not talking about something like City of Heroes, because you can't cheat in City of Heroes. But I don't want to, make it too easy on myself. On the other hand, I don't want to make it artificially too hard on myself and then think the game is insane. And it's complicated by the fact that I do tend to have very little experience with doing consent-based die rolling, where you roll the dice and it gives you a very vague answer of what is going on, right? Like, something dear to you is lost. And I'm like, well, I know the most dear things to me right now are my axe and my shield. Does that mean my shield is lost? And then, well, I have assets. Let me buff these guys. I have assets that are tied to my shield and my axe. And so, if I lose the axe, then I can't use, not only can't I use the axe to do damage, but I also can't use the sundering asset that essentially I paid points to get, right? And so, and there is a mechanism by which you can give back assets and get a little bit of experience, but it's not one-to-one, right? You don't get as much experience back as the asset costs you. Each asset costs 3 XP. So like I got a horse with my first 3 XP. If the horse dies, I think I'll get 1 XP back, something like that. And after I've spent 7 total XP on the horse, which fully maxes it out, 3 to buy it and 4 to upgrade it, if it dies, I'll get 3 XP back. So you don't like get it all back. So so it should be rare that you completely lose whatever it is that your assets are, since you bought them essentially with character points or experience points. On the other hand, you should be able to lose assets. Now with companions, Your companions, like your horse, has hit points, and when it goes down to 0, then it has to try to, face death and see if it survives. There are clear rules for it dying, but I don't know that there are any rules for, like, because Sunderer isn't your axe, right? It's your ability to use your axe to do things. So if your axe breaks, you don't stop being a Sunderer. But if your axe breaks, there are also no clear rules on how you get your axe back, right? Other than maybe you can go into town and use the resupply move, and if it works, you get an axe back. So, it's all very kind of, I don't know what to say about it other than kind of touchy-feely. It's all very indefinite, and you have to decide what it is that's lost to you. So, like, I did this battle, something is lost or destroyed, so I had my character drop the shield, and the guy he was fighting picked it up and used it against him, but then he killed the guy right away, so of course he got his shield back. And then he was fighting a boar, and again I got something valuable as lost or destroyed. I said, okay, at this point, since we've gotten this twice, I think the boar is going to break the shield. Now I don't have a shield anymore, right? But I don't know. Would a game master have made that decision? Not sure. Maybe they would have said you drop the shield again rather than that you permanently lose the shield, right? Or semi-permanently. So I don't really know. I don't have a good calibration for that. And so it's been very difficult to figure it out. And I think I've probably been way too hard on myself in a lot of cases. But I also know that I've done it wrong. Right? I forgot to do several different moves when I was supposed to. I did moves when I wasn't supposed to. And one of the biggest things I screwed up was not understanding how initiative works in combat. I thought you had to do the clash move to get initiative and win, get a strong hit to get the initiative back. It turns out any strong hit on any move you do in combat will get you the initiative back. Even enduring harm, if you get a strong hit on that, which means you like not only shrug it off, but you like get some of your hit points back, you can now gain the initiative. And so I didn't know that. So I was rolling strong hits and never getting the initiative back because I wasn't rolling a strong hit on the clash move. So I made a lot of mistakes. I'm glad I didn't post any of those recordings. So the jury's still out on whether I'm going to post an Ironsworn. I feel like it might be more interesting to post something more explicitly defined as rules. One thing I would love to do is try doing a Let's Play where I pick up 3 or 4 characters in AD&D and actually play an old school first edition AD&D. But that's not implemented in Foundry Virtual Tabletop, so I'm not sure what I would do. I could do some champions too, but that's not implemented in any virtual tabletop that I know of. And I wouldn't want to have to try to do it without a virtual tabletop, especially champions, because of the complexity of the character sheets and stuff. It's something I could do like practically in my sleep because I know the rules really well. On the other hand, this is all superheroes. It might be time to try a different theme like fantasy. So I don't know. If anybody knows of a cool game that can be easily soloed that I haven't mentioned, feel free to mention it in the comments, and I'll have a look at it. All right, let's call our contact. So let's look at the clues because you really haven't watched the story. So our first job with the ambassador was to go against the council. The ambassador explained that the Rickney on Earth were split into factions. The militaristic restructurists like himself and the peaceful traditionalists who were trying to negotiate with proper authorities of Paragon City. He explained that his mission was to disrupt those. So we got weapons from the council. We left them to implement the traditionalists. And then we went to wipe out the traditionalists. Not much of a story. A lot of these story arcs are kind of brief. And so he says, human traditionist negotiations standstill, open battles occurring, Arachnos interest, restructuralists, high plan coming together. I love it. So I think this is one of these things. So where he has a bunch of small story arcs, that's exactly what happened with Weston Phillips. So we'll continue with this guy until he runs out of story arcs, and then we will stop until we get to the next level. But I think we've had enough for today. We've done 3 missions. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Villains on the Rebirth server.